In this video, I'm going to show you 7 grammar mistakes that could be lowering your IELTS grammar score. For each one, we'll look at a real example, talk about what's wrong, and look at some correct examples. Now, if you're preparing for IELTS, make sure you check out our complete preparation course because it's going to teach you everything you need to know to get a band 7 or higher in every single part. Check out what some of our students have achieved after taking this course. All right, let's get into these grammar mistakes. On the screen right now, you can see the first one. In my country, many young people live with their parents until they get married. What's wrong here? What's the problem here? Well, the issue is with the word parent. Parent should be parents with an S, and that is the first grammar mistake. Plural and singular nouns. Now, when it comes to plural and singular nouns, you need to add an S or an ES to a noun to show that you're talking about more than one thing. So, for example, parent, that's one. Parents, that's 2 or more. Now, there are some irregular plural nouns, so that means you don't simply add an S or you don't simply add an ES. You need to actually change the word. And we're going to look at a few in just a moment. But there's 2 on the screen right now. We'd say 1 child, 2 children, 1 man, 2 men. Now, let's have a look at some examples. On weekends, I usually go out with my friends to relax after a busy week. So weekends, the person is not just talking about one weekend, so that's why we've added an S here. Friends, again, we're not talking about just one friend, so that's why we've added an S. Here is another example. The school should teach students how to manage stress and deal with pressure. So if you look at the word school, well, that doesn't have an S because we're only talking about one school. However, students does have an S because we're talking about many students, more than one student. Let's look at this last example. These days, many children spend more time online than interacting with people face to face. Again, we're talking about more than one child, and that's why we say children. Now, let's have a look at some more irregular plural nouns. So we've talked about this first one already. We would say 1 child, 2 children. The next one is woman, 1 woman, 2 women. Note that pronunciation, 1 woman, 2 women. 1 man, 2 men, 1 tooth, 2 teeth, 1 foot, 2 feet. Just remember, if you're talking about more than one thing, you normally need to add an S or an ES at the end of the word. Let's have a look at the next mistake now, which is on the screen. People often think that success only comes from hard work, but I believe luck also plays a role. What's wrong with this one? Well, the issue is with the word come. Come should be comes. And the problem here is subject-verb agreement. Now, when it comes to subject-verb agreement, this is mainly relevant for the present tense, if you're making a sentence with the present tense. So, subject-verbs agreement simply means the verb must match the subject in number. So, for example, if you've got 1 singular noun, well, you need a singular verb. However, if you've got a plural noun, you'll need a plural verb. So, for example, you'll need to add S or ES with he, she, or it in the present tense, but we don't use S with I, you, we, or they in the present tense. So let me show you what I mean. She plays tennis every weekend. She is 1 person, so we need to add an S here. The teacher explains things very clearly in class. Well, teacher is 1, so again, we need to add that S. And note here, we are using the present tense, which is why we need to add an S. And finally, a bit of a longer example. Most people believe that technology helps us connect. Well, technology is one thing, so that's why we say helps. But not everyone agrees Now, everyone is also considered one thing because it's just one group. It's one group of people. So that's why we have S with agrees. And then we say it improves. So again, we've got an S because it is one thing. It improves the quality of our relationships. So just remember, your verb has to match your subject. If it's he, she, or it, you normally need to add an S. If it's you, we, they, or I, then we don't need an S. All right, so let's look at the next one, the next mistake. Last year, I joined a volunteering program to help clean up local beaches. Well, the problem here is with the word join. So join should be joined because we're talking about the past. And that is the third mistake, wrong verb tense. So when it comes to the wrong verb tense, you need to use the correct verb tense to clearly show when an action happened. Did it happen in the past? Is it happening right now in the present? Or is it going to happen in the future? So for example, past actions normally need past tense verbs. So for example, joined, went, studied. So let's have a look at some examples so you can see what I mean. These days, more people work remotely instead of going to an office. So we use work here, which is the present tense verb, which is verb 1, because we're talking about these days. We're talking about a fact. We're talking about something that is true now. Here's another one. The government increased, okay, that's in the past, investment in public transport a few years ago. So look at the end there. We've said a few years ago. So because we're talking about the past, we need to add ed to increase. And note, when you have a word that ends in sed, we pronounce it as a st. So you pronounce that S sound, and then the ED is pronounced as a T sound. So let me say it one more time. Increased, increased. And the final one here, I think more people will travel locally in the future instead of going overseas. So we've got will, and because we've got will, we need to use verb 1. This is a common problem that students have. A lot of students use the verb ing after will. But no, when we're using will to talk about the future, we actually need to use verb number 1. However, if we just said travel, that would not be correct. We need to use the word will to show that we're talking about the future. Now, let me show you some basic verb rules in English. So the first rule is am, is, or are plus verb ing. For example, I am meeting my friend tomorrow. We would not say I am meet. That will be incorrect. Am, is, are plus going to plus verb 1. So if you've got going to, well, then you need verb 1. We are going to get a drink. Will plus verb 1. So like that example on the previous slide, it was people will travel more in the future. Okay, remember will plus verb 1. The next one is verb 2 for past simple. So they went to the beach last weekend. So we're talking about last weekend. That's clearly in the past. So we need to use a verb 2 here. And finally, if you're using did, you need verb 1. And here's an example. Did you see the movie? Okay, we would not say, did you saw the movie? No, when you're using did, you need verb 1. So don't make mistakes with your verb tenses. Learn the basic rules and it's really going to make a difference. Let's have a look at the next mistake now, which is on the screen. I recently watched a movie that really changed the way I think about success and happiness. Well, the issue here is with the word movie. We need to say a movie. Now, a is an article, and that is the fourth grammar mistake we're going to look at. Articles, a, an, and the. When it comes to the use of a, and the, there are many different rules and things you need to learn and understand, but I'm just going to quickly show you the very basics of articles. So when it comes to a and an, we use those for singular, non-specific nouns. And that's one of the keys there. It's a non-specific noun, so it could be anything. It's not a specific noun. When it comes to the, we use the when we're talking about something very specific or something we have already talked about. So for example, if you want something really specific, you would say, give me the, and then you say the thing because you're talking about something very specific. It's not okay if you just get anything, okay? You're talking about something specific. Now, sometimes we don't need to use an article, and that's normally true with most plural or uncountable nouns when you're just speaking in general. So let me give you an example. If you say something like dogs are cute, well, we don't need a or an because we're not talking about a singular thing, and we don't need the because we're not talking about any specific dogs. We're just talking about dogs in general, so we would not use an article here. So let's have a look at some examples. I read a book last week about personal development. So we're talking about one thing, and that's why we've used a here, okay? A book. Doctors often say that the environment we live in affects our health. So we're talking about something specific. We all know which environment we're talking about. And finally, music is very important in my life, and I usually listen to it to relax after a long day. So in this case, we're just talking about music in general. You know, it's no specific music that we're referring to, and that's why we don't use an article. So remember, the basic rules are use a or an for singular, non-specific things, use the for specific things, and use no article when you're talking about something in general, like music or education. Let's look at the next mistake now. I arrived to the airport 2 hours before my flight. Well, the problem with this one is with the word to. It shouldn't be to, it should be at. And that is the next grammar mistake, prepositions. Before we move on, we need to talk about what prepositions are. So prepositions are words that show the relationship between a noun or pronoun and other parts of the sentence. They often tell us about time, place, direction, or the way something is done. So for example, in, on, at, to, by, and with. These are some basic examples of prepositions. Now again, there are many rules and many different prepositions that you need to learn about, but let's just have a look at some of the most common ones. When it comes to at, we use at to talk about specific points. So for example, at the airport, at 6 p.m. We use in for months, years, and enclosed spaces. So for example, in July, in 2022, in the room. Now, when it comes to on, we use on for specific days or on surfaces. So for example, on Monday or on the table. Now, remember that these are just the very basic rules, and there are a lot of different prepositions and a lot of rules when it comes to prepositions. Let's have a look at some examples. He was born in 2001 and grew up in the countryside. So we use in with years. We're having a meeting on Friday to discuss the project. Well, Friday is a day, so we use on. And finally, we had dinner at a small restaurant near the river. So we're talking about a specific point, and that's why we say at. So remember, at for places, in for months and years, and on for days. Let's move on to the next mistake. She gave me some great advices before the interview about how to calm my nerves. What's wrong with this one? Well, the issue is with the word advices. We would not say advices. We need to say advice. This is all about countable and uncountable nouns, which is our next grammar mistake. So what does that actually mean? What's a countable noun? What's an uncountable noun? Well, when it comes to countable nouns, that means they can be counted. So they have a singular and a plural form. So for example, 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples, we can count them. Uncountable nouns, in English, we can't count them individually, so they don't have a plural form. So, for example, the word we saw on the previous slide, advice, we do not say advices, okay? Advice does not have a plural form because we can't really count it. So just remember, don't add s to uncountable nouns. You can use words like some, a piece of, or a bit of instead. So for example, if you were talking about advice and you want to make it clear that someone gave you more than one piece of advice, that's what you could say. You could say, my friend gave me 2 pieces of advice, but we wouldn't say 2 advices. So let's have a look at some examples. I found a lot of useful information on their website. Information is uncountable, okay, so we would not use s here. They bought several chairs. Chair is countable. 1 chair, 2 chairs, 3 chairs. That's why we add an s here. And some other furniture for the new office. Furniture, on the other hand, is not countable, so we would not use an s here or not add an s here. And as you can see, we have said some other furniture instead of adding an s. And the final example, we talked about different ideas. Well, idea is countable. That's why we add an s here, but we didn't make much progress. Now, progress is uncountable, and that's why we don't have an s here. So let's have a look at some more countable and uncountable nouns. Now, when it comes to ideas and thoughts, here are some countable examples. Idea, opinion, and suggestion. So for all of these, we can add s. Ideas, opinions, suggestions. Some uncountable examples are advice and information. So for these ones, we cannot add an s. When it comes to objects or items, most of the time they are countable. So chair or chairs, bottle, computers. Some uncountable examples are furniture and equipment. So we can't add an s here. Activities, trip, task, meeting. We can add an s for all of these ones. Uncountable examples are work and homework. So we cannot say 2 works, 3 homeworks. No, we cannot add an s. Food and drink. Countable examples, apple, egg, sandwich. Uncountable, rice, water, sugar. Abstract things, so things that you can't touch. Moment, reason, problem. We can add an s for all of these. Knowledge and research, we cannot add an s. They are uncountable. So just remember, some nouns can be counted, like apples or chairs, and others can't, like advice or information. If you learn the difference, you're going to avoid some of the most common grammar mistakes that students make in IELTS, especially when it comes to speaking and writing. Let's have a look at the next mistake now. People often forget how important is sleep when they're trying to study for exams. Well, the problem with this one is with is sleep. So that should be swapped and we should say sleep is. And this is the next grammar mistake, incorrect word order. Now, there are many different rules when it comes to word order in English, because word order in English is quite strict. And if you put the words in the wrong place, well, that can make the meaning unclear or sometimes even change the meaning. So in English, we normally follow the pattern of subject, verb, object. That is the most basic rule. Now, there are many other rules when it comes to word order, but this is not a full grammar course. So let me just give you one example. When it comes to adverbs like always or often or usually, well, they normally go after the subject and before the main verb. So this is just one example of word order. So let's have a look at some correct examples now. I don't know why he is always late to meetings. I've heard some people say things like, why is he? But no, that would not be correct, because if you say, why is he? Well, that's a question. But if you look at the first three words, I don't know, that's a statement. So we're not asking a question here, we're making a statement. Learning English has really helped me. Okay, pretty simple, has really helped me. And finally, she always studies in the evening because it's quieter then. So these are just some basic examples of correct word order. So just remember, word order matters. Even just small changes or small mistakes can make your sentence sound unnatural and sometimes even a bit confusing. So they were 7 grammar mistakes. If you want to learn 5 grammar structures for a higher grammar score, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, take care, and good luck with your studies.